But
So why don't you credit yourself for that at all?
Well, I would credit myself, and I got out, but I didn't bring a bunch of people with me. I wasn't I wasn't Moses, I didn't bring them all out. But it was lucky that I grew up in New Jersey, because I went to New York frequently. So I was aware of New York. If I had grown up in Omaha or something, I might not have been to New York so many times and known there's another place. There's a place you can go.
So you're talking about physical travel, and isn't that the weirdest part of the internet, which you take pains to say you're aware of, even if you don't use it that much? There's a lot of trash on the internet, but it also allows a type of low-cost mental travel that was never previously available. So a young person who lives in a place where they're told that they're a freak and no one's like them can actually very quickly fact check that and see, wait, maybe there's a lot of people like me. Maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe the problem are the people who won't let me just be me.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's a big advantage. The problem with the internet in that regard is, yes, it enables people, to be freer, in being aware, I don't have to stay here, or there is no here. That's another thing about the internet. They're here, but I'm not really here, because I'm not here, I'm here, So that's a very different thing. But also, it allows really terrible things to spread so quickly, because nothing spreads faster than a bad idea. This has always been true. Good ideas can take centuries to catch on. A bad idea, even before the internet, spread much more quickly than a good idea. But now, for instance, there would have been no attack like that on the Capitol without the internet. Not possible. It just wouldn't. There would have been no Donald Trump.
Or would it have been just piecemeal and far less effective? In other words, a person or two might have shown up to do something.
Yeah, but
it wouldn't have been that.
That's right. And also, it gives people, because so many people live their life that way, I think that even when they're doing something, in real life, it has a feeling, I think, to them. They were well aware that they were being filmed. They were filming themselves. They were filming themselves.
Yeah.
That guy who put his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk, this is an image well, you're not old enough, but the second I saw that, something came into my mind, which is that when I was a teenager, there were, all these protests at Columbia University, and SDS, which was Students for Democratic Action, or whatever it was called.
Society.
They had a big strike at Columbia, and they broke into the president's office. And there was a guy who had a picture of himself taken, not himself, but with his feet on the desk of the president smoking a cigar. Now, he was older than me, so I was a teenager. And even as a young teenager, I looked at that picture and I thought, you're a jerk. I mean, just that, you're a clown. That's like the stupidest thing. And when I saw that guy with his feet on the desk of Nancy Pelosi, I thought the same thing. You're a clown. This guy was well into his 50s, it looked like to me. And when he said, this is my desk, I thought, first of all, you don't have a desk. Not only is this not your desk, I'm guessing you're not a desk guy. I'm guessing the last time you had a desk, you were in detention, in junior high school. It was incredibly angering. And I think that's why he did that, and he had the same attitude as a teenager. It's a teenage thing. A lot of this stuff is adolescent, except that they're not kids, and they have guns, and they're allowed to vote, and so they're very dangerous in a way that teenagers generally are not very dangerous.
And do you see that in the current moment as overrepresented by largely male and often a white male movement that is terrified of losing its station, its historical position?
Yes, of course that's what it is. It's fear, I mean, these people in general are the most fearful people I've ever even heard of in my life. This thing with guns, every time you see them on the news or whatever, or read in the paper, they're always saying, I am entitled to defend myself. I'm entitled to defend my family. And I think, who's after you? I lived alone in New York City, as a 21-year-old girl, in an apartment that, forget how to dorm it, didn't even have an intercom system, okay? New York was incredibly dangerous then. It never occurred to me to get a gun. I wasn't that scared. I wasn't scared enough to get a gun. I would never even thought of a gun.
You were scared enough to pay more to live in the village.
Yes, but not scared enough to have a gun. A gun is, to me, truthfully, a gun is a stupid thing. it's a sign of stupidity. It's a stupid thing.
I want to do a lightning round where we do quick answers, and then I'll let you get out of here. Does that sound okay?
Fine.
In a sentence or a word if you can, but we'll see what happens. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
New York.
I mean, that's too broad a question. I'm sorry. New York what? New York.
New York City.
Yes, New York. Yes, that's my answer.
Martin Scorsese.
Yes.
Toni Morrison's meaning as a writer.
Toni has, of course, has a meaning as a writer, but Toni has much more meaning than even her work, which is great and important. But even people who've never read her, she has meaning too, and that's really unusual for a writer. I mean, Toni was. People who are young don't realize this. I mean, there's now 1 million, black writers and 1 million black female writers. There weren't. I mean, there were some, but Toni's like the first car. Like before the car, there were horses. There were other women, black writers. But what Toni said, and I always quote this, is, her first book. She said, "I wrote the book I wanted to read." And she wrote the book everyone wants to read. So now everyone thinks I should write a book about myself, which Toni didn't do.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, truthfully, I was never a big fan of Joe Biden, I have to say. He's always been to the right of me. I never forgot Anita Hill. I didn't have to be reminded of it, But I was very relieved when he got the nomination because I really thought that he was the only one of the Democrats that could win. He wasn't my choice. I mean, I wanted Elizabeth Warren, who I actually got to vote for because the New York primary is so late that by the time we voted in the primary, he was already the candidate and Elizabeth Warren was still on the ballot. So I voted for her, and she didn't win.
2020 showed us.
Well, I'm hoping it didn't show us anything in a way, because in other words, I hope that we didn't have to learn how to be in a pandemic. I'm hoping that this is going to be it, at least for my lifetime, so that now, of course, we know how to be in a pandemic. This is something I never thought I'd have to know, and I don't want to know, because I don't want to now be prepared for the next one. So, I do know that I could stay in the house for a year, but I didn't want to know that.
You watch Jeopardy
because I'm right so much. I'm right so much in Jeopardy that in the year of the pandemic, a year during which I had zero income, by the way, and was really I would watch Jeopardy and I would think, every week on Jeopardy I win thousands of dollars and yet I'm still broke. So, I mean, I have to say whole huge categories that I don't even try to answer, like the South American rivers, the New Testament, the Old Testament. I mean, but if it's, within, and I think all the sports questions, I'm glad to have this opportunity, they're totally unfair.
Your next book will come out if
I write it.
What do you tell a young person who says, wow, I'd love to grow up and be like